Yeah, okay.
Okay. Good evening. I am Councillor Francis Guidera, the Mayor of Crawley, and I welcome you to this virtual meeting of Crawley Borough Council's full council. And welcome to members of the public and the press watching this meeting live. As this is a virtual meeting, I'm going to run through the process. There will be no verbal public question time at any council meeting while virtual committee meetings are being held. However, under agenda item 5, public question time, members of the public will have had the opportunity to submit written questions in advance, which will be read out during the item and answered by the appropriate councillor. There will be no supplementary questions. The public and press can still hear and see the meeting, but this is a meeting being held in public and not a public meeting. For any full council meeting held virtually, all voting will be held via a recorded vote taken by a Democratic Services team member on behalf of myself, the Mayor. The exceptions are approving the minutes of the previous meeting, any other procedural item, or where the item's sole recommendation to a committee is to note the report. We will also be using group block voting, which I'll explain later in the meeting. Before I invite each member of the full council to confirm their attendance, I ask that they please ensure their mobile phones are switched off or are on silent, that their backgrounds are appropriate and they are aware of their surroundings so that they are not disturbed during the meeting. This includes having TVs, radios and smart speakers turned off. When councillors are invited to speak, please turn your camera on, unmute yourselves and pause for 3 seconds just to allow for the slight time delay in the connection. I also remind councillors to consider which councillor is before them alphabetically so they are ready to be sent live. As with all virtual meetings, we will now take agenda items 1, apologies for absence, 2, disclosures of interest, and 3, minutes together. I will now ask the Democratic Services Manager supporting the meeting tonight to invite, on my behalf, each member of the council to introduce themselves.
Good evening, I'm Chris Pedlow, the Democratic Services Manager, and for record purposes, Peter Nicholson, the Council's independent person, the Chief Executive, the Deputy Chief Executive and the Head of Corporate Finance, along with another Democratic Services Officer, are also in the meeting at present. I'm going to ask each councillor in turn to confirm their name, the ward they represent, if they have any disclosures of interest which are not included in the paperwork, and if they approve the minutes. We'll start with Councillor Ascoff.
Good evening, Councillor Liam Ascoff, Gossets Green and North East Broadfield. I have no further declarations of interest and I approve the minutes of the last council meeting.
Councillor Marion Aylings.
Hello, I'm Councillor Ayling, Marion Ayling, ward member for Viewbush and Broadfield North. I have no closure of interest and I agree the minutes from the last meeting. Thank you.
Councillor Andrew Belvin.
Good evening, Councillor Andrew Belvin, representing Pound Hill South and Worth. I agree the minutes of a previous meeting and I have no further declarations of interest to declare. Thank you.
Councillor Tina Belvin.
Good evening. I'm Councillor Tina Belvin, representing Pound Hill North and Forge Wood. I have no declaration.
Councillor Belvin, your sound has just gone.
Sorry. Good evening. I'm Councillor Tina Belvin. I represent Pound Hill North and Forge Wood. I have no declarations of interest and I agree the minutes of the last meeting.
Councillor Brenda Burgess.
Good evening. Just to say I'm one of the ward councillors I'm Brenda Burgess, one of the ward councillors for Three Bridges with the town centre, and I'm also a member of West Sussex County Council. And I agree the minutes.
Councillor Bob Burgess.
Thank you, Councillor Bob Burgess, ward member for Three Bridges. I approve the minutes. No declarations of interest.
Councillor Richard Barrett.
Yes, thank you. Richard Barrett, Borough Councillor for Pound Hill North and Forge Wood Ward. I also have no further declarations of interest to make, in addition to the one that's on the order paper, and I approve the minutes of the last meeting. Thank you.
Councillor Crowe.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Duncan Crowe, representing Furness Green. I have no further declarations of interest to declare, and I agree the minutes of the July full council meeting.
Councillor Eade.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Eade. I represent the Furness Green ward. I have no declarations of interest, and I agree the minutes of the last meeting.
Councillor Fiveash.
Councillor Rory Fiveash for Bewbush and North Broadfield. No whipping declarations or further declarations of interest, and I agree the minutes of the 15th of July. Thanks.
Councillor Flack.
Hi, I'm Councillor Morgan Flack, representing Southgate. I have no disclosures of interest to declare, and I also approve the minutes of the last meeting.
Councillor Guidera.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Councillor Francis Guidera. I'm the Borough Councillor for Tilgate and the Mayor of Crawley this year, and I have no further declarations or any declarations to make, and I do approve the minutes of the last meeting.
Councillor Hart.
Good evening. I'm the Councillor for Ifield and Ifield West. I have no disclosures of interest, and I agree the minutes of the meeting in July.
Councillor Irvine.
Good evening. I'm Councillor Ian Irvine, representing Broadfield Ward. I have no declarations of interest, and I approve the minutes of the previous meeting.
Councillor Jaggard.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Kim Jaggard from Maidenbower. I have no declarations of interest, and I approve the minutes of the last meeting.
Councillor Johans.
Hi, good evening. Councillor Gorinda Johns, a member for Northgate and West Green. I have no disclosures of interest, and I approve the minutes of the previous meeting.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you. I'm Councillor Michael Jones. I'm Councillor for Bewbush and Broadfield North. I've got no declarations of interest, and I do approve the minutes of the last meeting.
Councillor Lamb.
I'm Councillor Peter Lamb, Councillor for Northgate and West Green. I have no declarations of interest, and I approve the minutes.
Councillor Lanza.
Good evening, Councillor Bob Lanza.
Councillor Lanza, you've broken up. I will come to Councillor Lunnan and come back to you. Councillor Lunnan.
And I have interest, and I.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Lunnan, Councillor for Broadfield Ward. I have no declarations of interest, and I approve the minutes of the previous meeting. Thank you.
Councillor Lanza.
Good evening, Councillor Bob Lanza, Pound Hill South and Worth Ward. No declarations of interest, and I approve the minutes of the last meeting.
Councillor Malik, I believe he might be having trouble, so we'll come back to him. Councillor McCarthy.
Hi, good evening. Councillor McCarthy for Pound Hill North and Forge Wood. I have no declarations of interest, and I approve the minutes from the last full council meeting. Thank you.
Councillor McElhaney.
Councillor Tom McElhaney, Langley Green and Toshmore. I have no declarations. I approve the minutes.
Councillor Miller-Smith.
Good evening, Councillor Jennifer Millar-Smith from Maidenbower Ward. I approve the minutes of the July meeting, and I have no declarations of interest.
Councillor Mullins.
Good evening, Councillor. I'm Chris Mullins, Councillor for Gossip Green and Broadfield North East. I agree the minutes of the last meeting and have no interest to declare.
Councillor Mangale.
Good evening, Maureen Mwagale, represent Tilgate. I have no further declarations of interest, and I approve the minutes of the last meeting. Thank you.
Councillor Peck.
Good evening, members. I'm Councillor Peck, and I represent Maidenbower Ward. I have no declarations of interest to make, and I approve the minutes of the last meeting.
Councillor Pennington.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Alison Pennington, Pound Hill South and Worth. I have no declarations of interest to make and I approve the minutes of the meeting on the 15th of July.
Councillor Pickett.
Hello, I'm Mike Pickett, Councillor for Southgate. The minutes are a true record of what occurred at the meeting, and I approve them, and I have no declarations to make.
For clarity's sake, Councillor Pickett didn't have his camera on. This is now over to Councillor Purdy.
Okay.
Good evening, Jonathan Purdy, representing 3 bridges in the town centre. I have no declarations of interest to make, and I approve the minutes of the 15th of July. Thank you.
Councillor Rana.
Good evening. I'm Councillor Tahira Rana of Broadfield. I have no declarations of interest to declare, and I approve the minutes of the last meeting. Thank you.
Councillor Sharma.
Good evening, Councillor Raj Sharma from Southgate. I have no declaration of interest and I approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of July 2020. Thank you.
Councillor Brenda Smith. We'll do Councillor Peter Smith quickly, bear with me.
Am I live?
Yep.
Good evening, everybody. Councillor Peter Smith, representing Ifield and Ifield West. I've got no declaration of interest and I agree the minutes of the last council meeting.
Councillor Sudan.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Karen Sudan, representing Northgate and West Green. I have no whipping declarations, no declaration of interest, and I agree the minutes of the previous meeting.
Mr. Mayor, we're just going to try to the 2 councillors who are believing. It's Councillor Brenda Smith or Councillor Malik. Either of them. I can see Councillor Smith. Okay, Chair, I think we'll move on, and if they are able to join us, we'll let us know another time.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Can you hear me now?
We can. Welcome.
I'm sorry. I'm Brenda Smith, Langley Green and Tushmore Ward. I have no declarations of interest, and I agree the minutes of the last meeting.
And for clarity, the camera was not on.
Oh, okay, sorry. I can't hear him now.
Okay, the full council has agreed the minutes of the meeting of the full council held on the 15th of July 2020 are an accurate record. Item number 4, communications. As shown in the agenda, I would normally be presenting long service badges to Councillors Lamb and Councillor Lamb and Councillor Jones for their 10-year service. Obviously, we are unable to do this as this is a virtual meeting. Instead, on behalf of the council, I would like to thank both councillors for their long services to the residents of Crawley and say that we do have your 10-year badges for you in the town hall and you can collect them from Democratic Services when you can.
Already got mine, Francis. Thank you.
Well, that's good. Then, Councillor Peter Lamb, if you'd like to come and collect yours whenever you're ready. I've been asked to inform councillors following the successful trial of the use of block voting at the AGM meeting that the Constitution has been amended in consultation with both group leaders and the Chair and Vice Chair of the Governance Committee to enable block voting for recommendations at full council meetings, only with the exception of any recommendations which are required by law to be held via a recorded vote, such as setting the council tax and the budget. To confirm the procedure, as with the last meeting, the group whips will be casting the votes on behalf of their respective parties, namely Councillor Lunnan for the Labour group and Councillor Burrett for the Conservative group. Before each group's block vote is sought, any members from both the Labour and the Conservative groups will be given the chance to vote independently rather than through their group's block vote. Are there any other items of communications? Okay, then I would just like to say it's been obviously a difficult, challenging couple of months for me as the new mayor, but I am grateful to have been able to attend several events during this period. I have been invited by the Armed Forces Veterans Breakfast Club to a number of events, including a walk around at Tilgate Lake, their sponsored 50-mile walk. I didn't do 50 miles, it was just a couple of walks around the lake, but lots of them did plenty of walking. I was honoured to attend the installation of the new vicar at Highfield Church. I'm very pleased to be able to visit St Francis School to collect, on behalf of Crawley Open House, their the food that they had gathered together for harvest, amongst many other things that that I have been asked to come to. Obviously, lots of the things I'm doing at the moment are they're not major events because we just can't host them. But I am very grateful to have been invited to these different places, and I will continue to try and attend as much as I can until such time as things change and I can't. That's all I really wanted to say on that. So thank everybody for all the invitations. Item 5, public questions. The next item is a public question time, and we have 30 minutes set aside for the item. As we are unable to take verbal questions, we now accept written public questions in advance. However, we have not received any public questions in advance, therefore we will move on to the next item. But of course, that needs to be stated. Item 6, consideration of full council recommendations and call-in decisions. There are 2 recommendations before the council. As recommendation 2, leisure contract extension of variation, is an exempt Part B report, we will take this recommendation as the last agenda item, and we will move into closed session, which will not be broadcast to the public. That being said, we will now deal with the recommendation 1, which we can deal with in open session.
Right, recommendation 1 is public spaces protection order regarding alcohol consumption. This report has been presented to the council prior to tonight, and first time it was in October 2020.
Councillor Smith, can you put your camera on, or bring you live?
Yes, okay, hang on.
Sorry.
How do I put my hand up?
Is that it? Is that better?
Bob?
Right, start again, shall I? Right, this is of recommendation 1, which is the public spaces protection order regarding alcohol consumption. It went to cabinet on the 30th of September, and it's now it's back before us again because the current public space protection order expires in this month, October. The order has been in place in Crawley since 2006,
we'll deal with the
relating to.
Yeah. Would you? Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillors.
It was relating to alcohol consumption and alcohol-related antisocial behaviour. The purpose of the PSPO was to prohibit the consumption of alcohol where it contributed or was linked or associated with nuisance or annoyance to members of the public or a section of the public. And it was noted that the council had the authority to make the PSPO. That item was presented to the Overview and Scrutiny Commission on the 28th of September, and there has been a whole bullet point list in the minutes and the agenda of the items which were included. Mainly now for me just to say that the recommendation is to make a public spaces protection order in the form of the draft at Appendix A to this report, and having considered the outcome of the consultation exercise and other relevant matters. Provide the full council is satisfied, which I believe it is, unless they're going to tell me now they're not. The Antisocial Behaviour Crime and Policing Act 2014 are met. The recommendation will stand. Brenda.
Thank you. Can't hear the mayor.
Don't think he's saying anything.
Yes.
Is he?
Sorry, bear with us. Bear with us just a second. I'm just discussing with Chris Pedlow what to do next. Just bear with us a second. Okay, thank you, Councillor Smith. Can I just confirm for the record, are you moving the recommendation, Councillor Brenda Smith?
Yes, I moved recommendation 1.
Thank you so much. And then, so can I then ask Councillor Crowe? I believe you are seconding.
I'm very happy to second, Mr. Mayor. Yes, and so I formally do, and I will be speaking. Shall I speak now? Yeah, I'm happy to speak now, Mr. Mayor.
That's absolutely fine. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm very pleased to second recommendation 1. I enjoyed watching the debate at the Overview and Scrutiny Commission and also speaking on this item at the previous Cabinet meeting. As Councillor Brenda Smith has pointed out, this has been in existence since 2006, which was quite a vintage year, and I'm not talking about the age of the wine or other spirits there. And it's something that we do have to renew via full council. It was obvious that the public consultation was very good indeed. In fact, if only every public consultation could be as favourable as the one that we received back on this from residents and businesses. It's quite clear that the public do support this, and I'm quite confident that all councillors will indeed support it. It's worth recognising that this is not going to necessarily restrict the consumption of alcohol for people who are not causing any bother to anybody. It's about having a tool in the box to be able to address drinking that is antisocial, that is leading to antisocial behaviour. And while it would be naive to say that this will solve those problems, and of course we have had this for the last 14 years, having that extra tool in the box, it is worthwhile, because when we ask members of the public, you know, what do you think about antisocial behaviour, they would say that us, the police, perhaps society as a whole, does not really do as much as what they would like to see. So I think everything that we can do as a council to help address people's concerns, and those tools that are available to us that are available, that we should be using. So I'm very pleased to second. The Conservative group will be voting for this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Crowe. Councillor Brenda Burgess.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I don't have a hand to put up on my little keys at the bottom. No, I just wanted to say that I'm really pleased this the present PSPO public space protection orders has already been mentioned, has been in for some years now, and during that time it's been really successful in ensuring that our neighbourhoods have been kept as safe as possible. Historically, the street community, although I stress this PSPO is not just aimed at them, have usually been very compliant when asked by officers and staff to hand over alcohol. And I think this in the main has been down to the non-confrontational attitude of the staff, the community wardens and the police, particularly our community PCS police constables. I can never remember, it's PCSO, you know, police community support officers. They all deserve our thanks and support, especially during this COVID crisis. And I would like to encourage all members to get to know their PSCO and even maybe walk the ward with them in order to become more aware of what they get up to and what they do. So in conclusion, I fully endorse recommendation 1. It's on page 7071, and it's worked in the past. There is no reason to think it will not work in the future. And before I sign off, can I say thank you to all those who have worked so hard and have been involved in this to bring it forward, whether they're officers, police, wardens, members. Just a huge thank you.
Thank you, Brenda.
Okay, on my back. Thank you, Councillor Burgess. Councillor Smith, would you like to use your right of reply?
I don't think so. I think it's been very well covered by both Councillor Crowe and Councillor Burgess. The recommendation is quite clear that we make a public space protection order, and that you know, on the grounds of the Antisocial Behaviour, Crime and Policing Act, and as Councillor Burgess said, this has been well received in the past, and the members of the public who it might be asked to hand over their alcohol at some time have really been very compliant, and you know, there has not been any controversy. So let's hope it stays like that. That's a a good recommendation for the town. So no, I just
agree with you completely. I agree.
Yeah. So I move recommendation 1.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? No.
Nope.
If not, can I ask Councillor Lamb? Okay, Councillor Purdy.
All I wanted to add to that was my agreement with the speakers so far, and I think in the context it would also be useful for us as members of the council to take a moment to recognise and thank our community wardens, who, as well as the police and PCSOs, are in the front line when it comes to enforcement in this order, to thank them for their hard work and commitment by undertaking what can at times be a very difficult and stressful task. But I'd also like to commend them for their patience and consideration and their treatment of people appropriately and sensibly when they do so. As other members of the public, members of the council are muted, I'm sure that the public will just have to imagine the cries of hear, hear in support of our wardens from across the floor of this virtual council chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Purdy. As there are no further speakers, Councillor Lamb, please formally move the adoption of recommendation 1, Public Spaces Protection Order, Alcohol Consumption, arising from the Cabinet 30th of September 2020, and in doing so, you can use your right to reply.
I formally move the report, and given that we all seem to be in favour, I won't waste everyone's time by repeating things already said.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb. We will now hold the vote on recommendation 1, Public Spaces Protection Order, Alcohol Consumption, from the Cabinet, held on 30th of September 2020. Will the Democratic Services Manager please conduct the vote?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I seek each group's block vote, can I check if there are any members of either the Labour or Conservative group wishing to vote as independent rather than within their group vote? Please indicate now. There's no indications, therefore please can I ask Councillor Lunnan to provide the 16 Labour block votes.
Thank you. The Labour group are for recommendation 1.
Councillor Burrow, please provide the 17 Conservative votes.
Yes, can I cast the 17 Conservative block votes in favour of the recommendation?
Councillor Firevash, please would you cast your vote?
Yeah, so I vote for recommendation 1.
And Councillor Sedan?
For recommendation 1. For recommendation 1.
Thank you, Councillor Sedan. Mr. Mayor, just to confirm, it's unanimous 34 Votes all in favour.
Thank you very much. Recommendation 1 is therefore agreed. Item 7, notice of motion 1. We will now deal with the notice of motion before us this evening, which is set out on page 43 of the agenda, which is notice of motion 1, the planning white paper. This motion will be moved by Councillor Crowe and seconded by Councillor Lamb. I therefore call upon Councillor Crowe to formally move and present the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'm very pleased to formally propose this motion, and I will speak to it now. We know that Boris and the government want to build back better, and that is something that I do indeed support. We know that the economic recession that we are in, and the impact of the coronavirus is going to be with us for quite some time, and that construction, whether it be home building or infrastructure projects, will be a key part of turning our economy around and returning us back to good and sustainable growth. So I am not against more house building. We do need to see more housing for people, including, of course, Crawley people. However, there's building back better, and with quantity, there is also quality. And I do have some concerns, and I'm not the only one who has these, that quality to some degree is going out of the window in a very commendable rush for quantity, to A, to address the housing shortage that we have, and B, to try to kickstart the economy. Now, the government published a consultation white paper in August this year, and anyone can respond to it. It's running for 8 more days. If you go to gov.uk, you can anyone can do an online submission, and this council will be doing its submission in the coming days following this meeting. But by bringing this motion here, what this enables is all members to have an input into the response that our officers will be making on behalf of the council, highlighting some of the key concerns that are laid out in my motion before you. Now, I will just go through some of the concerns that we have. Now, the proposed removal of the duty to cooperate is something that is of particular concern to Crawley, because we know that we cannot meet our own housing needs. We have real constraints on our land. We just don't have enough of it, I'm afraid. And our neighbours are much larger and do have much more available land, albeit they do have their own housing pressures as well. But the government are proposing to remove the duty to cooperate because they feel that it perhaps doesn't work. Well, I would argue maybe they should try to strengthen it rather than simply to remove it. They may still expect there to be cooperation, but unfortunately, if it isn't mandated, then there is a risk that it will not happen. We are concerned that the formula-based approach, what we need is something that works for Crawley. I think when these proposals were thought up, they were looking at the issue nationally, and I do think that some of the issues that the government are trying to address in planning, I do think it needs a bit of a shake-up, are perhaps a lot more pertinent in other areas and less so in Crawley. I reference in my motion that the council indeed notes that 9 out of 10 applications are passed either by officers or by committees. And one of those issues that I do have, and I think it's also shared by other members, is that the potential lack of member input into planning. It's one of the key things that we do as councillors, is that we formulate our local plans, but then we also interpret those as we deal with planning applications. And there is a concern that there will be less member input, and that while we may see more development, there is a concern about the potential quality of that development. There are also concerns about permitted development and the ability to increase your property by up to 2 stories without planning permission. And while, of course, I'm not against anybody seeking to extend their own home, it does need to be something that is in keeping with the with neighbouring properties and within the street that property is in. I would hate to see what you might call an arms race upwards, with no real controls behind it to ensure that we have development that is suitable for the area that it's in. I also have concerns about the zoning. It's a bit more complicated than that, I would argue, than just having 3 basic zones. So the motion itself sets out the key concerns. There are elements of the planning proposals. I do like the greater simplicity of it, but unfortunately, I feel it perhaps goes too far in the simplicity that the government are trying to create with these proposals. And I do hope that they would listen to us. Indeed, other councils are making their own recommendations to government following the consultation that is happening. I am grateful to Councillor Lamb for seconding this motion, and also to Councillors Peter Smith and Jonathan Purdy for talking to me about it, and having a chat about what our concerns of the government proposals are. I'm very much hoping that all members will support the motion as it is. I think it will send a good, strong message to government that if both parties and indeed 2 independent members are all united in supporting this motion and raising their concerns about the planning proposals, that actually it could potentially have some impact. This is about doing what's right for Crawley. It's not about politics. It might look a bit odd that I'm raising concerns about something that my own government is putting forward, but actually it's about getting what's right for Crawley in the long term. So for me, it's not party political. I want to see good, sustainable planning for the future. I think we all do. And that's why I'm very pleased that Councillor Lamb seconded the motion. I'm hopeful that all members will support it. Certainly, in terms of the letter that I'd be requesting for the Chief Executive to write to Robert Jenrick, the Secretary of State, I think it will be quite powerful if she's able to say in that letter that every single member present here at the Council supported it. So I'll leave it there, Mr Mayor, and look forward to listening to other members' contributions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Crowe. Councillor Lamb, please second the motion and confirm if you're wishing to reserve your right to speak later during the debate, please.
Thank you. Unfortunately, my network quality appears to be poor at the moment. I'm happy to second the motion and to speak now. I'm very pleased with this coming forward as a cross-party motion. We know that there are issues with delivering housing in the country. We know that these need to be addressed, and that the fact that the supply is so limited is one of the reasons why the costs are so high for people to get into housing for the first time. But we also know that Crawley has one of the best delivery rates when it comes down to housing in the country, and that the steps being taken in the current proposals would reduce our ability to deliver on the affordable element that we know is absolutely critical for meeting the gap in Crawley's current housing market. Without that, simply, we can build as many houses as we want, people will not be able to afford them, and that's why it's critical it remains within that particular planning system. The government needs to consider this more in the round. It needs to ask what more developers potentially could be doing, and they could be doing more. And I have worked with developers in the past, and I'm familiar with the ways in which sometimes they try to reduce their obligations towards the community or fail to meet those obligations. But certainly moving forward, we want to be able to continue to have a town which is thoroughly well planned. Planning goes to the heart of the concept of Crawley as a new town, with the neighbourhood principle at its centre, and the weakening of these powers that potentially come forward right now very much goes against the heart of the tradition of what is our community. So I'm very happy to support this notice of motion. I very much hope that the government takes listen of the cross-party support here today.
Peter Smith.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb. I will now open the debate to the floor to discuss the motion.
Smith, Councillor Peter Smith.
Thank you very much, and thanks for allowing me to go next. As Cabinet Member for Planning, I'm very keen to make a few comments on this. In the interest of supporting the comments Duncan was making, this is all about Crawley. I have read the government's white paper. I think it's the first time I've read a white paper, Planning for the Future. And it does have some reasonable objectives. So to keep my comments short, I'll just mention a couple. As Peter Lamb was just referring to, increasing the number of houses built to resolve the housing crisis. It's a very simple statement, but I certainly wouldn't agree with it, and that's an honourable objective I think we all agree with. Deliver on our commitment to infrastructure first. Now, this is very much needed, as we often find that infrastructure delivery lags behind house building, leading to congestion on our roads, lack of schools, dentists, doctors, etc. It comes up at every planning committee. All our residents know the houses go up and everything else doesn't ever seem to make it. In fact, it's a common complaint and a justifiable complaint from our residents when we reviewed planning applications on the planning committee, and they asked that we shouldn't allow development as there's already a shortfall of infrastructure, and more building will simply make the problem worse. Now, we're not allowed to do that under the current rules, so having a commitment to deliver infrastructure first, I would very much welcome that. Homes England are promising that for the 10,000 homes they're going to squeeze into the tiny space to the west of Eiffel, so we'll see what that means in practice maybe. The third positive point I would make is setting a deadline for all local authorities to have an update local plan. Now, this is something that I welcome, particularly because I'm proud to say that since I've been cabinet member, we've had a current local plan. And in fact, one of the first things we did in 2014 was to actually adopt the Crawley Local Plan 2015 to 2030 on the 16th of December 2015, my wife's birthday. And I'm also pleased to say that we're on schedule to deliver a 5-year review of it, which is wittily being called the Crawley Local Plan 2020-2035. Now, all joking apart, this is exceptionally critical to the future of our town because we need an adopted local plan to prevent predatory and unwanted development and applications from developers, because even when we refuse them, they go to appeal and then get approved on appeal if the local authority doesn't have an up-to-date local plan. And we have got examples on two sides of our boundary from neighbours that have gone through just that scenario with developments on our boundary that they didn't want, and we've ended up with them. Thank you very much. So I'm proud that Crawley's supporting that, and I support this as an objective of the white paper. But when we start to look into the details in the white paper, and more importantly, and this is a point that both Peter and Duncan have made, look at the white paper in the context of Crawley's needs. I care about the whole of the country, but I'm here to represent Crawley, and it's Crawley that we're interested in. But we need to look at Crawley's needs, and more importantly, probably Crawley's spatial context. Someone's put my picture up. That's put me off. We find that some of the proposals, when we look at it in that way, are a bit concerning. And so what I've done is, in addition to the several bullet points highlighted in the motion, which I hope that people will agree to, I'm not going to speak about many of them, but I've pulled out a couple of other things which I think are also important. The first one, it's all about homes. Well, yes, the paper is, but forward planning and development management is not just about homes, is it? It's about the people that are occupying the homes who will need jobs. And so we need to ensure that we have space for industry and employment sites and that they get delivered. Now, at the moment, that's a chronic and an acute problem for us because as a landlocked borough, we're already finding it difficult to provide enough sites for employment for our existing and predicted population. So having a developer charter in the planning policies that allow unfettered development is going to really just dump houses, but also add to the employment that's already coming our way. And indeed, in the current local plan review, as those that have been good enough to come to the local plan working group will see, we're already having to look at temporary usage of the Gatwick safeguarded land, which was something that was sacrosanct up until recently. My second point is tenures. The white paper is very strong on home ownership, in particular with a whole section on first-time buyers. They call it the first home scheme. I don't know how they came up with that, but there you go. I welcome that. I want to see people who want to and can afford it buy homes. There's nothing wrong with that. But our overwhelming priority need in Crawley is affordable social rented housing. We've got huge waiting lists. We're struggling to finance the building of social rent housing. We're struggling to find the sites for social rent housing. And I would expect a future planning for the future programme to have something very serious and clear to say about that, as well as supporting private ownership, so that we have a more balanced tenure mix across our town, partly because of the affordability issues that we have with buying homes, and we struggle with that particularly in Crawley because we have some of the most expensive housing and our median wage is one of the lowest. So we've already got a chronic affordability problem that applies to both purchasing a home, but also to renting a home. And of course, the default is that people have to go in the cheapest rented places they can get. So we need to get more social rented housing, and the white paper needs to support that properly. This is something we've all heard it on the doorstep. It's not just ourselves, it's our children, our grandchildren, their children. Everybody wants to know why they can't get on the housing list and why they can't get a home. And it's not through want of trying from this administration. Duncan's touched on this a bit, but the next item I want to talk about is local democracy. The proposals talk about changing to a zone system where the town will be every area of the town will be categorised into one of three categories, very simple categories: growth, renewal and protection. These categories would be decided when a future local plan is put together. So it would be decided once at the beginning how that would work. Presumably there'd be a haggling match with developers, but once it's decided, planning permission will just automatically come through if you're in a growth or a renewal zone. And the question that raises is, where does the planning committee fit into that? Now, those of us that have been on planning committee, many of the members have, will know that this is one of the most controversial topics in town. We have people come in to talk about overlooking from a window of a next door's house. We have had people talking about the size of gardens, the appearance of the house. Duncan actually mentioned the putting 2 extra stories on. If your neighbour wants to put 2 extra stories on, unfortunately that's not part of the planning for the future. That's already been brought in, so you can do it now without permission, sadly. But the reason I'm making that point is I don't think any of us on this council or any of our residents want to see unfettered development going on all around them when they don't. Neither the members will have an opportunity to comment or reject these applications, and neither will the residents even have a chance to have their say, as far as we can tell. I think that's something that would be mightily unpopular with our residents if the number of objections and comments we get on our typical planning applications are anything to go by. So taking that right away, yeah, people are going to love that. I can't possibly support that as an approach. My last point, you'll be pleased to know, is the heading, creating beautiful, sustainable places. Now, these words I've taken out of the white paper. It talks about getting local people involved in setting their own design guides and codes, but also refers to a national model design code. So I think there's kind of a bit of a contradiction there, unless they're going to put national design codes in first and then allow us to modify them. Now, I'm actually in favour of some national design codes, and we do have them already, and we've got some of them in our local plan. For example, room sizes. Again, this is something where we know from the way developers work on permitted development, if they don't have to build and deliver homes for people that are of a decent standard, then they don't. And we've seen tiny homes, single person flats, smaller than my garage. We don't want to do that. We want to have design codes. But how we're going to agree a design code that fits across all developments is a really good question. We already have something similar in the existing planning system where we have policies. So we do have policies on garden sizes, parking, another controversial issue, water use, sustainability, etc. And I think it works well because they have some flexibility in them and they get applied during the pre-app process and during the actual review by the planning committee. But having a rigid design code perhaps foisted on us, it takes away, and Peter Lamb mentioned this, it takes away our ability to maintain Crawley Newtown design standards, layouts, etc., etc. And I think it will just change our town for the worst, and it will be universally unpopular. So to conclude, I'm personally not opposed to change. I know that change is often good. I think there are many things that could be done to improve the current planning system. And more importantly, perhaps the whole process from planning application to delivery, and a lot of it is back-ended. It's about enforcing the developers to actually deliver, and that is covered in the white paper, to be honest, but whether it will be strongly enforceable, I have no idea. We do have a pressing need in Crawley, like space to build homes, delivering decent affordable homes and increasing job availability. But the white paper does not cover or offer reassurance that they've even begun to understand this problem for Crawley, let alone offering solutions that would help Crawley, its residents and its businesses. So in concert with the previous two speakers, I would urge all members to support the motion so that we can send a clear and joint message to the government as laid out in the motion, saying to them basically, nice try, but please go away and have another think. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. That was, sorry? Technical issue.
Mr. Mayor, do you want to use my feed a second? Thanks.
Yeah.
Apologies for this, we just had a technical issue.
Oh,
save headphones on. Be live.
Okay. Right. Camera here. Excellent. Thank you. Just technical issues. These things happen. Thank you very much, Councillor Peter Smith. That was comprehensive, and obviously I allowed you to continue because everything you were saying was valid. And, you raised some very good points. Can we now bring in Councillor Purdy? Councillor Purdy, if you'd like to speak on the matter, please do. I would ask as well if members could be a bit more succinct going forward, because obviously a lot has been said that is already very valid, and that's not to say you can't speak, but obviously we have an X amount of time, so just think about the words that you're using. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much, Councillor Smith, for your detailed analysis of the white paper. I think, as has been mentioned, we have a housing issue in this country, which, put simply, is that we do not build enough new homes. If we look at the last 120 years, in which decade did the United Kingdom build the most homes? And I'm sure, like I was, you'll be surprised to hear me say that was in the 1930s. Yes, the 1930s, the decade that most people think of as sitting between the Wall Street crash and the run-up to the Second World War. But in the United Kingdom, we had a housing boom, such that by 1939, 1 in 3 families were living in a home that had been built in the last 20 years. And whilst 1930s houses that immediately come to mind when we think of that period are the millions of semi-detached homes that drove the major rise in home ownership, that period also saw a major expansion in council housing and the completion of places like the Becontree Estate in Barking and Dagenham, which with 26,000 homes was at the time the largest public housing estate in the world. So what has happened since then to reduce the rate of building homes? Well, since then, we've had planning, or more specifically, the Town and Country Planning Act 1947 and its successors. And the uncomfortable reality, particularly for someone who chairs a planning committee, is that planning legislation can be a major blocker to building the homes that this country needs. So when the government announced it would be bringing forward changes to planning legislation, I was hopeful that we would see some real improvements in the planning process and in the design and the character of the housing built by developers, whether under planning permission rules or under permitted development. Unfortunately, as this notice of motion and the previous speakers spell out, the package of changes being proposed is not the right answer. I could speak all evening on this, but noting our Mayor's words, I'll pick out a couple of items. I'm sure that members would agree with me that we do not want to see our parks, gardens and green spaces covered in high-rise tower blocks in order to meet an arbitrary target set by a mathematical formula. The building target approach is short-sighted and has been mentioned before, is fundamentally undemocratic. But also, when you ask people, where would you like to live? By far the largest group of responses is in favour of low-rise houses with gardens, away from town centres, away from city centres, and ideally within walking distance of the countryside. But here comes the challenge. Nobody can afford that. But it's not the house that's expensive. It's the land with planning permission that's expensive. And why is planning permission expensive? Or why is land with planning permission expensive? Because planning permission is restricted. The next thing you hear, but you just want to concrete over the greenbelt and build all over the countryside. Well, when we look at MHCLG figures, just 1.1% of land in England is used for residential building. So there is plenty of space out there for new homes without jamming more into crowded urban areas such as Crawley. Then there is the proposal to remove the duty to cooperate on the slightly dubious grounds that it's not working very well. Okay, that may well be. We all know it can be a struggle at times to achieve cooperation between neighbouring authorities, perhaps with very different views. But the duty to cooperate is there because so many elements of development do not sit neatly within single jurisdictions. Along with new homes, as has been mentioned, comes the requirement for the necessary infrastructure to support the residents. Roads, public transport, schools, doctors' surgeries, to name but a few. And delivering these needs engagement, involvement, action from neighbouring authorities and all tiers of government. And those issues haven't just gone away. And the duty to cooperate should be strengthened, not thrown out with the bathwater. I return to my original theme. We need to build more homes in this country. And whilst there are some good proposals within this package that have been talked about already, The overall direction is away from local democratic accountability and quite definitely not suitable for our town. I will therefore be voting in support of this notice of motion, and I would urge all members to do likewise. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Purdy. Can I now bring in Councillor Ian Irvine, please?
Councillor Irvine, you're live.
I couldn't hear what the Mayor said, so sorry about that.
Sorry, Councillor Irvine, I was just saying it. I'm now bringing you in to speak. If you're ready.
Right, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We must all take up lip reading just to be sure, I think.
Oh, this IT.
I know. I can't wait till the day we go back to proper meetings. But anyway, firstly, yeah, I mean, I may well go over some ground that other people have gone over, but it's hard to understand the reasoning behind removing the duty to cooperate. Like Councillor Purdy, I've heard that it's because it doesn't work well in some places, which may be so, but there's no reason to believe it doesn't work well in other places. I want to be confident that if, for example, the development west of Ifield gets the go-ahead, this council can be in there striving to ensure that we have a good quality development on our boundary and striving to ensure that the people of Crawley get something from it. On house building, the Local Government Association has compiled records which show that about 90% of planning applications are approved, but there are more than 1 million homes with planning permission have not yet been built. So the present system cannot be blamed for housing shortages. I believe that one of the most effective policies of this council over the last few years has been the provision of affordable homes, a policy which has benefited many people. Yet it seems that these proposals will make the delivery of affordable homes more difficult. According to the Local Government Association, if these proposals have been in place over the last 5 years, around 30,000 affordable homes across the country would not exist, at a time when over 1 million people are on council waiting lists and around 93,000 people are living in temporary accommodation. I agree with the Local Government Association. Councils need the power to determine what is right for their local area when it comes to affordable housing. Thresholds for affordable housing should not be set by central government. Whatever happened to localism? I'll leave it there, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for listening, and yes, I will be voting in support.
Thank you very much, Councillor Irvine. Can I now bring in Councillor Chris Mullins, please?
Thank you, Mayor. I wasn't sure whether you'd seen me or not, because I normally have a hand up here, but the hand seems to have gone off the bar down the bottom.
I could see you, Councillor Mullins, definitely waving yes. No worries.
I just wanted to say a few words because I'm somebody who moved to Crawley and came to understand how well designed it was. You know, you get the knockers about Crawley, but when you actually look and understand the town, you start to understand that Crawley is a very designed town, a garden city actually, and it's all based on its village concept with its centres. Already we have permitted development, which can completely undermine everything that we want to do, and we have no say in what they get up to. And that leaves me greatly concerned. I mean, I think that as a town council, we should be involved in ensuring standards of space and design, because houses have still got to look nice. They've still got to be nice places where people want to live. They need to have reasonable space, and people with children definitely, and other people for other reasons, need gardens and space around them. We also need community facilities in our areas. Crawley has its community facilities now, and if we build and expand, we would need more community facilities, recreation and shops, playing fields, and may I say very strongly, allotments, because people are very interested these days in growing vegetables. And it's a lovely, healthy activity and very much part of my well-being portfolio. And I will never stop hammering to make sure that when we're putting our playing fields in, we also put our allotments in, and that we have these facilities for people. So it raises a lot of questions about how much we'll be able to get involved and to enforce these things into new areas that might be built in and around Crawley, and very little say that we might have. I get very concerned about that, because at the end of the day, I can't help feeling that builders would want to build as many houses as they could for profits, and just to walk off with the profits, because none of those leading builders, owners, would ever want to, or would ever be living in those properties. And the last thing I say is that this actually, going forward with planning regimes, should be an opportunity to build the latest type of houses, the latest environmentally friendly houses, the type of houses that use as little energy as possible, the type of houses that into the future will be part of repairing our very wrecked world in improving the environment. And these are very important things. And I doubt if any of this has been thought about in any of this legislation, about those environmental standards that are very, very important into the future. We have the technology now, and that's what really should be used in designing future houses. And that's what I would like to argue for. What I'm afraid I'm seeing is loss of local democracy for us as members, and the complete undermining of our planning officers. And I think that is absolutely unacceptable. I'm so pleased that both groups on the council, plus the independents, have come on board and said no to this. It's very powerful to be united, and very powerful message to send back to the government. And let's stick together all the way through, and let's work as well with other councils if we can, who must be feeling very shell-shocked by these proposals as well. So obviously I'm supporting completely this motion, and thank you, Duncan and the Conservative group, along with the Labour group, for putting it together, and let's hope that it does some good.
Thank you, Councillor Mullins. Councillor Rory Fiveash.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that the high standards of quality housing is what residents have rightly come to expect of our planning policies. But I want to just talk about the 40% affordable housing. We have a policy to secure 40% affordable housing from future developments in our town, and this ensures that some of the housing need of existing residents is met by private developers. This is, as we've heard, so much more important when, like in Crawley, suitable land is scarce. At least that's my understanding of the reasoning behind this policy. However, we currently have a developer building around 150 luxury flats in the town centre. These flats are being built on land owned by the council, provided seemingly for free, with the use of a council-owned car park. These flats will also be benefiting from the use of a district heat network, owned and paid for by the taxpayer. Yet none of these flats will be built by this developer will be offered as affordable. While I understand this particular block is part of a larger development which will have 40% of affordable housing, this is at the taxpayer's expense rather than the developer. A cost, or saving actually if you're the developer, almost identical to the cost of the new, and some call it free, town hall. I don't really think that fits within the spirit of the policy or most people's understanding of it. However, I will be supporting this motion tonight in the hope the government does a U-turn and that we can do slightly better in the future to enforce our policies fairly to all developers. Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Fiveash. Councillor Richard Burrett.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, one of the pitfalls of going towards the end of a long debate like this is that obviously you do find a lot of what you wanted to say has already been said by others. You try to avoid repeating if at all possible, so I will try that. I think it's been an excellent debate. Like other speakers, I'm really pleased that we're hopefully going to come together unanimously on this. A number of comments have been made about the planning system. I've always taken the view with all systems that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And actually, I don't think the planning system in this country is that bad. I think it works relatively well in many instances, but it has its faults. It's too slow, it's too cumbersome, it can be too rigid at times, and it certainly needs a number of tweaks to improve the process. But I think that's what it needs. It needs improvement, but without throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And what concerns me about this white paper is that so many of the changes would amount to throwing the baby out with the bathwater and actually removing things that are beneficial. Planning to me is all about localism. A number of members have talked about local democracy, they've talked about the fact that every area is different, and I think we need to recognise a formula-based approach to housing numbers moves totally away from that. It's top down rather than bottom up, and that's not what localism and local democracy should all be about. And for that reason, I hope the government will think twice. Similarly, the first bullet point in part 4 talks about this concept of developer discretion over which units are affordable being a significant concern. Well, what concerns me about that is that if developers are going to have some discretion over the number and location of affordable units, what if they all say at any given point, we can't provide, it's not viable? Where does that leave us in terms of a council trying to provide affordable housing for our residents, trying to reach a certain percentage? Again, there's reference, one of the subsequent bullet points, to the loss of local democracy and accountability. And as I've said, that to me is key. And what bothers me about it is that this is coming out at a time when obviously the public are very concerned about other issues. It's not something that's going to generate a great deal of public concern over a white paper. But what bothers me is that it's one of those things where the public won't realise what they've lost until it hits. It won't be until residents in a particular area are unhappy about a particular proposed development that they find out that the process has changed, and actually the amount of engagement and the amount of input they can have into it has actually reduced, and that really bothers me. Yes, we do need to build for the future, but in my mind we need to build sensitively and in the context of local areas. I just fear that the reforms that are being put forward by the government will skew the balance too far in favour of the presumption that most applications will be approved and that most development will go ahead, and against the importance of public engagement in the planning process and localism and the role of local members and planning committees in actually making decisions, because we're the ones that know what goes on locally and what our residents want, and we're the ones that should be making those decisions. So I fully support the motion, and I hope that all members will support it tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Are there any other people who wish to speak? No. Okay, I would like to very briefly speak. The biggest thing that concerns me about what's listed in our notice of motion is the removal of the duty to cooperate. Crawley, as we all know, we're pretty much at the end of the road when it comes to available land, and buildings are now having to go upwards, which is okay at this point, but that was never how the town was designed. One of the previous speakers mentioned how Crawley is built on principles, and actually another comment about if it ain't broke, don't fix it is true. I love the way that Crawley's designed. I love the neighbourhood principle. I think it's absolutely fabulous that you walk from one neighbourhood to another and they have a parade and they have religious buildings and they have their own identifiable play areas and parks. Most have their own allotments. I think all, but the newer ones I'm not so sure. And I do reiterate what Councillor Mullins said about the importance of allotments. Having grown up in Crawley and out of my bedroom window, having a huge, possibly the biggest allotment in the town in Northgate, it is fabulous to see people getting involved in in outdoor activities and growing food and working with nature, and that's good. And I think we really need to try and keep the design of the town as much as we can Crawley centric. So of course I support this motion, and I'm very pleased that everyone is so passionate about Crawley. It matters, and what we're voting on today is a very important matter, and I am really concerned, particularly about the removal of the duty to cooperate, because the reason that's there is to force neighbours to cooperate. They wouldn't have had that in place if it wasn't necessary, and it concerns me for the future. Without that in place, I can't see how Crawley can continue to provide what it needs to house the people that want to live here, particularly people whose children grow up. Okay, so that's what I wanted to say. Councillor Crowe.
Councillor Crowe, you're on mute.
My apologies. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'll come in to sum up before the vote, if I may. Can I thank all members for their contributions in this debate? And I was particularly pleased to receive personal thanks from Councillor Chris Mullins. I particularly savoured that, and we'll remember it. Councillor Peter Smith spoke at length. Actually, I think he had well over twice the allocated time, but I didn't interject to complain about him going over his time, because he was actually speaking a lot of sense, and I was very supportive of what he was saying. He referenced frustration, and indeed residents' frustration with infrastructure development, how it always seems to come afterwards, and it always seemed to be not quite what we were told it would be. That's a particular issue of concern. Councillor Irvine spoke about affordable housing, and obviously as the cabinet member for housing, he will be all too well aware of the challenges that we face as a council. Indeed, 2 of the 7 bullet points reference affordable housing and our concerns about our ability as a council to deliver it. I'm particularly pleased that it looks like all members are going to support this motion, because if Crawley speaks with one voice on a national policy that has significant implications for our town, then I think that Crawley's got a more powerful voice, and I think that's really helpful. So I'm looking forward to the vote. Just finally, could I just thank the officer team who have been working on this and who will be finalising the submission and sending it to government this week, and hopefully the government will take some notice of our council. And I don't expect that what we do end up with is going to be perfect. Nothing is ever perfect for everyone, but hopefully we will get some changes that will better suit our town. And finally, accountability was mentioned. I've been on the planning committee for many years, on and off, although when I'm off I still keep an eye on it, and sometimes I think the planning committee gets it wrong and makes a wrong decision, and I might even tell members that I think they voted the wrong way. But crucially, whether I think they got it right or wrong, they own it and they're accountable, and we as councillors are accountable to the people of Crawley and the decisions we make in terms of planning on the planning committee. So to have that taken away from us takes away that local accountability, which I think is really important. So I'll leave it there, Mr. Mayor, and look forward to the vote. Thank you.
Okay, as the debate has finished, it is now on to the voting. On the notice of motion, the planning white paper. Will the Democratic Services Manager please conduct the vote?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I seek each group's block vote, can I just check that if there are any members from either the Labour or Conservative groups wish to vote independently rather than through their group's block vote? Please indicate now. There's no indication, Chair. So please can I ask Councillor Lunnan to provide the 15 Labour block votes?
Thank you. The Labour group 15 votes are in favour of this notice of motion.
Councillor Burrow, can you provide the Conservative group vote?
Yes, thank you. I'm very pleased to say that the Conservative group's 17 block votes will be cast in favour of that.
Sorry, Karen, Burrow, it's 16. Councillor Burgess is out of the meeting at the time of the vote.
Ah, right, okay,
Just
sorry.
for clarity's sake. Sorry. Just had a IT issue.
Technical issue, yeah.
No, just for clarity's sake.
Thank you.
Sorry, it was.
Oh, she's back in.
Oh, I'm back now.
Okay.
Can we take her vote, please?
Independently, please, because you weren't.
I heard the vote. I was back when I heard the vote called. I'd come back in.
Okay.
But you were last one was, sorry, the last one was talking, so I didn't interrupt. So I was here. I did hear the last.
Councillor Burgess, could
Yes.
Just for the legalities, could you just give your vote on the notice?
With your camera on.
Yeah.
Oh, for legality, I'm for it, like everyone else. Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Five Ash.
Hi, thanks, Chris. Yeah, I vote for the motion.
And Councillor Sedan.
Thank you. I vote for the motion.
So, Mr. Mayor, that was unanimous in favour.
Notice of motion 1, the planning white paper is therefore agreed.
Thank you, on mute.
We can't hear anything.
No, can't hear a thing.
My fault. My fault. My fault. Okay. Item number 8. Councillors' question time. The next item is Councillors' question time, and we have 30 minutes for this redesigned item. We will start with noting the 2 written questions submitted by Councillors Crow and Burrett, respectively, as detailed in the supplementary agenda, which includes the responses by Cabinet Member for Planning and Economic Development, Councillor Peter Smith, and by the Leader of the Council, Councillor Lamb. Councillor Crow, do you wish to ask a supplementary question or ask a further question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't wish to ask a supplementary question because I simply haven't actually seen the answer to my written question. I did look at the supplementary paper that was sent out, but didn't notice it earlier today. So whether I've overlooked it or not, I don't know. But I do have another question that I would like to ask, if I may.
Okay, yes, please do go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. My question is to Councillor Chris Mullins, the Cabinet Member for Wellbeing. I was pleased to hear from the County Council that Buchan County Park had its green flag renewed, and so that created my interest. And I went and had a look at the green flag website. I was also pleased to see that several of Crawley Borough Council parks and gardens have also been awarded green flags. Obviously Tilgate Park, Goffs Park, Worth Park Gardens, the Mill Pond, and also the Memorial Gardens, which was particularly pleasing to see because at the previous full council, Councillor Brenda Burgess had asked a question about the Memorial Gardens losing its green flag. So can I ask Councillor Mullins, is this correct about all these Crawley parks and gardens that the council operates now receiving green flags, and does he have any reason to give as to why he thinks the Memorial Gardens has now been awarded a green flag? Possibly, did Councillor Brenda Burgess' intervention help in any way?
Well, first of all, in a way, Duncan, you've stolen my thunder a bit because I was hoping to get in and sort of almost do this as an announcement sometime today and hear to the roof about it, because I think that it's a tremendous success. We have Tilgate, Goffs Park, Worth Park as well. the Memorial Gardens, and also, of course, the Mill Pond has been awarded. So that is a resounding success in anybody's terms for a town to be able to achieve green flags in all of those areas. The reason we get those green flags, of course, is our workers. You know, nobody sitting in an office pushing a pen. They might be doing the strategy, but they're not doing the work. And the guys out there with their picks, shovels, and spades, and that they're the guys and gals that are out there doing the work, and they're the ones that we really need to show some appreciation for. The Memorial Gardens we've improved quite a bit. You might notice the entrance has changed. We took away the heavy growth there. It's more open and laid out, and a bit of maturity's taken place where we've had to do some works, put pipes in, and also, of course, the new play area has come on stream, and the whole area is looking gorgeous. So from being gorgeous originally, it's gorgeous plus now, and it's just a lovely area and really is well deserved. But as I say, all of that happens down there is about the actual workers, the people who go out there and they put the plants in the ground, they put the turf on the soil, and they make the place look lovely. I think that this town owes those workers a great debt of honour to say thank you to them in some way or other. And I'm discussing at the moment with our officers how we can go to each individual worker and say thank you to them for what they've done, because I think they've done a sterling job, and it's something that we should, as a town, appreciate. I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Councillor Mullins. Councillor Burrett, do you wish to ask a supplementary question or ask a further question?
Oh, sorry, Mr. Mayor, sorry to interject. Do I not get a supplementary on my verbal question?
Okay, in consultation. Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
Thank you very much. Can I thank Councillor Mullins for his answer, and also concur with his comments to thank our staff in our parks and gardens for the work that they do week in, week out throughout the year. So thank you very much. And I look forward to some form of formal announcement about the our Green Flag Awards, and no doubt there will be a press release featuring Councillor Mullins, although I don't recall seeing one with you grinning when we didn't receive a green flag for the Memorial Gardens, but no doubt we will see one this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crowe. Return to Councillor Burrett. Do you wish to ask? I beg your pardon. Okay, Councillor Mullins. My apologies. We are definitely we're not following the list here. Go ahead, Councillor Mullins.
I was just saying, there will be some publicity, that's inevitable, and there will be some photographs, but I will make sure that if there's photographs, I'm standing next to the workers that have done the job.
That's fantastic, Councillor Mullins, and of course, I was very happy to visit with you to the Memorial Gardens, to the mosaic. So yes, well done to all the staff. They're the people that do the work, and we definitely do owe them a debt. Councillor Burrett, I beg your pardon. Councillor Burrett, do you wish to ask a supplementary question or ask a further question?
Well, I don't wish to ask a supplementary question. Firstly, can I just thank the Leader of the Council for the answers that have been tabled today. As some members will be aware, this is something of a historic question. I asked it actually back at the February meeting. The answer couldn't be provided in time for the meeting, and obviously we've had a bit of a hiatus, and the July meeting was slightly different, so it's been left until now. They're very detailed answers. I haven't really had a chance to go through all of them in detail today, so if I've got any further points to raise, I will take them up at a later date if I may, but I would like to thank the Leader for the answer that he's given. I do have another question, if I may, which is also to Councillor Mullins, and it's regarding the Horth. I really just wanted to ask Councillor Mullins if he could give us an update on what is actually happening in terms of potential reopening of the Horth going forward. I drive past the Horth pretty much every day, and it's really sad to see the signs up saying the Horth is now closed. There are adverts outside for 1 or 2 outdoor events over the next few weeks. I'm not quite sure how those are going to work if we get bad weather, but other than that, it is pretty much closed. I'm aware that a number of theatres in other towns are opening gradually with socially distanced seating, reduced capacities, etc. So I wondered if Councillor Mullins could just tell us what the current situation is at the Hall and what the plans are for the future, because it would be a shame for it to continue to be closed on a long-term basis.
Yeah, can I answer now, man? Yeah.
Yes, please do answer, Councillor Mullins.
Nobody is more disappointed, I think, than probably me about the Hall not operating. I mean, the arts and culture and things that I'm involved in are really very much part of me and the way I see life. And so to see what's happening is pretty tough going for me mentally. But there is some solace in the fact that it's happening all over the country. Whilst there might be a few signs of some places opening, it may be that they've got very spacious places where they can still get a lot of people in. We can get about 8, maybe squeeze 900 people into the Hall. But if you want to put on some of the performers and they bring their crews and you have the engineers and the lighting and the staff, if you start to put a metre between people or 2 metres between people in seating in the Hall, it becomes financially unviable. And that's just the cold, hard reality of theatres. Theatres are designed historically to put people in, a lot of people into, and they tend to be a bit sardine-y, you know, you're all close together. And that's the difficulty of theatres, and we're not alone. We've got another meeting coming up, Richard, to discuss more detail. And there's financial implications for us as well with our contract. And there's all sorts of problems that we're trying to work through at the moment. Well, I haven't got a reopening date for you. There are a couple of, I think, comedy performances that are listed, which might have a smaller audience, which can be spread about, and it's probably a single person on a stage or something, which might be more viable. But for anything sort of what I would call larger scale, it becomes unviable if you can't fill the auditorium, and that's just practical sense. I can't see it any other way. So we have tried using the amphitheatre outside, which we have, but that's also weather dependent and has limits to what success you can have. And coming into the winter now, even less opportunity probably to use that. So can I just leave it that my real and deep ambition is to see the Hall open again as soon as possible. And I can't give you a date and the forecast, but my intention and work will be to get that Hall open if we can. But we've got no choice but to bear in mind the government safety guidelines on COVID-19. We have to take that on board.
Yes, thank you. Can I come back with a supplementary, please, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can, Councillor Barrett.
Yes, well, I thank Councillor Mullins for his answer, and I sympathise with the situation he's in, because it is a very difficult situation. But I wonder if he could also say a little bit about what the implications of the current situation are for the staff of the Hall. I know they're not our directly employed staff, but they are employed by the contractors, and there are obviously quite a few people who will not be working currently. So I wonder if he's got any comments about what the implications or arrangements are there.
Yeah, I mean, Mayor, if I could, that's going to be the bones as well of part of the next meeting that we're having. But I do know that some of the staff have been furlonged at the Hall. I know sound engineers. My own grandson's a sound engineer, and there's just no work for them. I mean, there's nowhere they can go and find work because nobody's employing anybody. I know stacks of musicians that are out of work and they're not earning any money. And unfortunately, Richard, it's been a neglected area from the government. I mean, there has been some money gone to the arts, but it's tended to, like it does, to float to the top, to some of the more privileged places. And as I understand it, the Horth didn't get a cut of the government grant that came out recently. So we are struggling. The staff, as you say, are employed by Parkwood Theatres and directly are their responsibility. But that doesn't mean we don't care about them. It doesn't mean we remember that one time they used to work for us and that they were our employees, and I do care about them. And many of them I've known for a long time. But so all I can say is that when we have our follow-up meeting, we were going to talk about a lot more detail. A lot of that stuff's got to come out, and we've got to try and find out what Parkwood's plans are. I mean, the reality is, if there's no work for them to do, they can't do any work. So how do they exist? What sort of money are they living on? What government aid are they getting? Can they claim benefits and, you know, and that sort of thing? And a lot of them will have families, and it's just a terrible situation. I mean, something that I never dreamed I'd have to face when I run for election. I never thought I'd have to face the serious consequences of what's happened now. And I want to see the back of it as soon as possible.
Thank you, Councillor Mullins. Councillor Mike Pickett.
I'm sorry, I don't wish to speak, actually.
Okay. Just waiting for it to unmute. Sorry, Councillor Pickett, it's come up as you were next, so no problem.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
That's all right.
Councillor Karen Sedan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've actually got two questions. So one question is to the leader, and another one is to the Cabinet Member for Public Protection and Community Engagement. So if I ask my question to the leader, can I stay on the list, please, if there's time for me to ask?
Yes, that's fine. It's one question per question, but yeah, you certainly can stay on the list. That's fine. That's noted.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question relates to a matter that was raised by the leader at his coronavirus Q&A at the beginning of July. At that time, he used the Council's coronavirus Q&A platform to state publicly that he had lodged a standards complaint against Councillor Fiveash and me. As the leader should be aware, it is the policy of the Council that complaints remain confidential and will stay confidential and only go in the public domain if and when a complaint is upheld. Given that Councillor Lamb's complaint was rejected, will he now take this opportunity, please, to apologise to Councillor Fiveash and me and set the public record straight on this matter?
I'm just going to come in now. Before Councillor Lamb answers, I just need to say that I'll put the question to Councillor Lamb should he wish to answer. However, I'm not sure that it is an appropriate question, as it seemingly relates to Code of Conduct matters, which means it's likely to include a disclosure of confidential, personal, or exempt information, and therefore a question that can be rejected. So I will put it to Councillor Lamb. Do you wish to answer the question?
I don't believe, within the context of what I've informed I am and am not allowed to talk about, that I can answer that question. I have many very strong feelings about this and about surrounding issues relating to my complaints, which I believe are firmly found in evidence, and I'm happy to discuss them at leisure in a different forum.
Okay, that's your response, and that is noted. Thank you, Councillor Sedan. Thank you, Councillor. Sorry, Councillor. Councillor Kevan McCarthy, please.
Councillor McCarthy, live.
Yep. Okay. Hopefully you can hear me now. I just got my microphone on. Right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a question for Councillor Mullins. Reference the Horth Theatre. I was really going to ask about the long-term support for staff and the well-being of the facility, but as we seem to have this coming up on a future meeting, I'll put it on the back burner and just say, has he considered the options of a hybrid solution where we could live stream events, paid live stream events in conjunction with the crowds, or the minimum crowds that we could have in the facility? Has that been considered?
I mean, live streaming is what a lot of artists are trying to get into now. Instead of being able to perform on a stage in front of people, but I'm not sure what income you can derive from that, or how you get your income from it. And running the Hall really is about driving an income to making it viable. Although we don't forget, we do subsidise the Hall to the tune of about £400,000 a year when it's running, when it's up and running. So there's some financial angles to it. I think from being able to enjoy art again and culture again, I would like to see some forms of live streaming going on, but you need a lot of things to do that. You need the artist to be willing to do it that way. You need still to be able to pay the artists for performing, and then you need to decide how you're going to accrue the income to pay them, and how you work with broadcasters to send that out. So there's lots of questions about it. I'm not a tech bod, by the way, so I mean you might have better technical answers than me, but I mean certainly I would look at anything that brought music, because at the moment it's a bit like that Don McLean song, you know, the day the music died. I mean, it feels a bit like that at the moment, that, you know, that nobody's doing anything very much. And then don't forget there's drama performances, there's all sorts of things that we put on. And there's the local community activities that are all missing as well, where we bring schools and associations, private clubs come in, and the Operatic Society and perform at the Hall. There's a whole gambit. It's a massive, massive problem. And we wouldn't, in those circumstances, even be able to cover all of that, Kevin. But I mean, I would certainly be open to looking at anything.
We could
Thank you, Councillor Mullins. Councillor McCarthy, do you have a supplementary response? I was
just going to suggest that we could live stream the community awards, which were one of the first casualties of the Hearth closure.
Well, your response, Councillor Mullins?
Can I answer that quickly and say that the community awards, which I go to every year, has got an awful lot of people at it, and they certainly fill the stage up in about 3 or 4 rows, and it's packed. And I don't know how you would, with COVID conditions, you could put that on. In fact, that was one of the first casualties.
Well,
so,
thank you. Thank you, Councillor Mullins.
So. Yeah.
Councillor Rory Fiveash, please.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question's also to the leader. So you and several members of the local Labour Party have made several public statements regarding the rent increases on Tilgate Parade and across the town. In these statements, you've been very clear about your views on the matter, and that in your view, it's not possible to reduce the increase. I'm also aware that the issue was of some concern to local residents during last year's local election, and continues to be today with the loss of the post office and chemist, who were very clear when I spoke to them that the increase was a deciding factor. So with hard times ahead, and people are concerned that these kinds of increases will see local parades stripped of shops and other vital services, forcing them to travel further, exposing them to an increased risk of infection. And many of those people will be elderly, vulnerable and very scared. As you know, there's an independent scrutiny panel set up to look at the policy. In light of your public comments, can you guarantee, firstly, the independence of the panel, and secondly, that if the panel recommends a reduction in the increase, that those recommendations will be followed in as much as you have the power to do so? Thank you.
Councillor Peter Lowe.
Well, I'm well aware of negotiations taking place at the moment about vacant units to ensure that services which would otherwise be lost are being provided, and those are taking place with the full cooperation and in fact at the instigation to a large extent of this council to try and ensure those needs are met. The panel is independent. We actually, under the rule book, not allowed to interfere with the workings of a scrutiny panel in terms of the rule book, that being the Labour Party's rules as opposed to the rules of the council when it comes down to scrutiny. So it is obliged to be independent regardless of whatever else anyone may think. If it recommends a decrease, and that has to be taken into account in comparison to all the other different potential uses of that money, or in terms of our current ongoing budget deficit. As members will be aware, we're having to take a significant amount of money out of the budget this year as a result of the impact of COVID. Unlike government finance, and it'll be up to members to decide whether or not subsidising businesses is more in principle with the beliefs of the members on this council than it is ensuring that money goes towards the provision of services. Those are the alternatives. There are no others, unfortunately. It's a zero-sum game.
Can I ask a supplementary question?
Yeah, I just want to let the public know, I'm trying to come in, but if you could, when you finish speaking on a question or on an answer, if you could give me like 3 or 4 seconds, because the click of the mute button takes several seconds for it to activate. So yes, would you like to ask a supplementary question, Councillor Ivash? Clearly you do, so go ahead.
Yes, I would. I apologise, Mr. Mayor, for getting ahead of myself. So, yeah, my supplementary is that I refer to an email sent to the Labour group in July this year regarding the power share impact between the Labour and Conservative groups. In the email, you said, "We give them," i.e. the Conservatives, "the neighbourhood parade scrutiny panel chair, and they will ensure it goes the right way," diffusing their main attack line from last year. As I understand it, this email is subject to freedom of information disclosure.
Councillor Fibash, I'm being told that this is private information, internal email information, so it's not necessarily something that can be.
Well, it's alleged internal.
It's a party issue. It's a party issue, internal party stuff. So it can't be asked as a public question relating to council business.
It's relating to the operation of a council-run scrutiny panel.
No problem. I'm being advised by several people that question just can't be asked in this forum. Councillor Firebash, I'm sorry. Several people are telling me that those matters can't be asked in this council supported forum.
So a matter that's about a council-run scrutiny panel and its independence from the executive of the council.
You can ask a question about that, but you can't talk about personal emails that have been sent internally to people. That's the issue. If you want to ask a question about that without discussing the emails, then you can go ahead. Yes. So if you want to rephrase your question so that it doesn't contain the direct verbatim written text.
In that case, I understand that in an email you said that the chair of the scrutiny panel would make sure it went the right way and it would diffuse an attack line.
Yeah, that's
my understanding is
chair is Lanza, and he's coming now.
Bob Lanza would like to come in. He is the chair of the scrutiny panel.
I'd just like to finish the question, if that's okay, because I think I've got quite a good point.
You've silenced.
Right, we can't ask that question because it gets us into all kinds of very challenging territory. And as the mayor and trying to do the role as properly as possible, I have to be fair to Councillor Lamb as well. So that question just goes far too much into party details and allegations.
Well, it's alleged to, Mr. Mayor.
You're bringing Councillor Lanza, who is the chair.
Yeah, Councillor Lanza, I'd like to bring you in, please. That's by the staff.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for the avoidance of doubt, the councillor-owned neighbourhood parade scrutiny panel will operate with its 5 members in an independent fashion.
Yes, and can I bring in Councillor?
Look objectively at our policy. Sorry.
Sorry, Councillor Lanza, I think your internet's breaking a little bit.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you now, Councillor Lanza. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to assure everyone that the council-owned neighbourhood parade scrutiny in an objective, independent manner as any other scrutiny panel set up by this council, and it's certainly not tying itself to the policy of either main political group. It will look objectively at this important area of council business. And I can assure everyone that I've received no communication inviting me to steer the panel in one direction or another.
I've just been advised, just for clarity's sake, I brought Councillor Lanza in as he is the chair of that scrutiny panel, and it's important that he makes that very clear that he, as a Conservative member, is not of the ruling party. And whilst we do have these agreements in place, he is quite happy that the panel will be allowed to operate fairly and independently. As am I, and I'm also on that panel, and I believe that is the case. Councillor Lanza will ensure that the panel operates as it should do. So I'd just like to bring in Councillor Peter Lamb now, please.
Thank you. Well, I'm getting rather tired of having to face allegations without any evidence actually being presented, one way or the other. The reality is, as Councillor Lanza said, since he has been appointed to that role, we've had no communication whatsoever, and I can't control it one way or the other. I've not spoken with any Labour members about voting one way or the other or supporting it. I think there's a very clear case for it to go one way, and I think that's what I would imagine is going to go, because it's the only rational line I've been able to see so far. But if it comes up with a different line, I can't sway one way or the other, in the same way as I can't sway any other opinion panel, frankly.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb. Councillor Tina Belbin. Very quickly, though, because we are nearly out of time, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question for the Cabinet Member for Housing, Councillor Irvine. Are you aware of the plight of the residents of Milton Mount Flats? Not all the lifts have been working in 3 out of the last 4 weekends. One weekend, both the 2 main entrance lifts were out of action. This has meant mums with toddlers have had to use the narrow stairwells, as well as disabled residents getting from one end to the other of this huge block. The security doors also have been broken, and this has given non-residents access to do unspeakable things in the lift and use drugs. At the moment, there are no security doors in place at all. When are the promised improvements going to happen, please, especially CCTV?
Lego cake. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Belbin, for your question. No, I wasn't aware that the lifts weren't working at Milton Mount Flats. As you can imagine, not being aware of that.
Sorry, could you just hold 1 second for me, Councillor Irvine? Sorry, somebody's not muted and it's interfering. Okay, go ahead. Please start again.
Right, okay. As I said, I wasn't aware that the flats weren't working at Milton Mount Flats. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I do know that the people of Milton Mount Flats have had quite a lot to put up with this year, what with the water not working, and I thank them for their patience. I will, in the absence of being able to talk about something I don't know about, I shall make the relevant inquiries and make sure that an answer goes out in the next available members' information bulletin.
Thank you, Councillor Irvine. If you don't mind, we're going to ask people to submit the supplementaries in writing because we're running out of time. Can I please bring in Councillor Maureen Mwagale, please? Councillor Mwagale, you're muted. You're muted. You need to unmute your mic. We can't hear you.
I'm sorry, my apologies. This is a question for Councillor Chris Mullins. On the 12th of September, the Friends of Goffs Park held their AGM. I attended and the Mayor attended too, but not one of the 4 Southgate councillors attended, not one. And what about yourself, Mr. Mullins? Currently, Goffs Park is suffering. Ongoing drug abuse is going on in front of the children and their parents. It has been going on throughout the lockdown and long before that. It was raised at that meeting and they were desperate for help with that. It's not just a police matter. It requires council officer support and some kind of plan. And whilst it's nice, you know, some parks are getting awards, but others are suffering and residents feel it's getting out of control. In addition, there are people fishing without permits and the birds are being harmed. Your response, please, Councillor Mullins.
Councillor Mullins, please do come in. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I have to say that we are in the middle of a COVID crisis, and all of the other meetings I've been attending have been over the internet, not gatherings in places. And I'm of an age where, frankly, I've got to watch myself. I'm 75, so I can't really be jumping into close-knit meetings. And also have a little boy to rear, and I've got a. So that's my personal thing. But I mean, I don't think it was a time when there should have been meetings. A lot of other meetings have been suspended, or they've dealt with them in different ways. But for the general issues, obviously, what goes on in the park goes on in a lot of parks. It's not just in Goffs Park where there are people taking drugs or drinking. And that's what the BO is about. BO, I've got it wrong. Is about in trying to control open air alcohol problems and stuff like that. We are aware of it. And by the way, I am in touch with the Friends of Goff Park. They write to me on a regular basis, and I have committed our officers, when we can get clear of some of the other work we're doing and some of the other problems, which has been a very difficult time, to put a decent business case together for taking Goffs Park forward. And by the way, you might have noticed that we've opened the pitch and putt as well, and we've got a new concession there, and there's some good ideas about floating around about how we can improve the pitch and putt and make that more viable. And we would look forward into the future, maybe to do some building and some toilets and some other things. And so don't think that I'm not aware of Goffs Park. I'm very aware of it. It's a park I've always loved and been involved with. And I've been for a long, long time a member of the Friends of Goffs Park. Although I think lately I might have lapsed. I can't remember joining the last time. But nevertheless, I mean, I know they know me, and I know a lot of them. And I'm quite happy to work with them on any occasion. But
thank you, Chris.
I think we have to be careful about going to close-knit meetings these days. And I would like to see the back of that as well. But we are.
Thank you, Councillor Mullins. Thank you for your answer. You are right in saying, in particular yourself and other ward member, that maybe shielding or may not necessarily wish to attend. I mean, that's a fair reason for yourself and for another member in that ward. Can I just bring in Councillor Pendlington lastly, because we are out of time, and say there won't be a supplementary. Any other questions can be submitted in writing. So Councillor Ali Pendlington, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Am I live? Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm afraid my question is also for Councillor Mullins, but I will be succinct. We're about 2 months away from Christmas now. We've heard repeatedly Christmas is cancelled, and unfortunately that's impacting us here in Crawley too. We lost the pantomime, the event up at Tilgate. I just wondered whether you had any thoughts or whether you'd had any discussions so far on anything we can do as a council, because I think we've got a bit of a civic responsibility actually to bring people a bit of Christmas cheer at a time when there is not a lot of cheer to be found.
Thank you for that, Alison. It's a good question. And it is something I've raised with our officers, and Sabrina at Tilgate Park, and we've been looking to see if there's anything. But I've got to say that the obvious thing that we do every year at Tilgate Park, and that's the lovely Christmas event that we put on up there, cannot happen this year. It's not feasible. We wouldn't be allowed anyway by the government to bring people together into close proximity with one another. And if we put an event on like that at the park, that's exactly what would happen. And we'd be as bad as some of those street scenes you've seen from the big cities where people are crowding into streets and having a party outside. We can't do it. What I've been asking is there anything we can do, any other things that we can do to try and bring a Christmas cheer, bit of Christmas cheer to the town? But the only thing I say is we're not alone. I mean, all towns have got the same problems, and for God's sake, we've just seen a shutdown up in North East Town. They've shut the place down again. So I mean, it's COVID, I'm afraid, and it's one of those things that we don't want, but we've got to live with.
Thank you, Councillor Mullins. Just a suggestion, we did have a brass band playing Christmas music a couple of years ago, and they were absolutely outstanding. Of course, they can't play, I've just realised, because they're blowing wind instruments, so we'll scotch that one as well. It really is a challenge, and I have to say, as the mayor, almost any event has become unworkable. So I really hope that you can come up with some fab things that will bring a bit of festive cheer to the town centre.
Would you realise that you can't even sing?
Yes.
Pass germs on by singing. That's how bad this is.
I know.
I mean,
thank you. We must move on. We must move on because we're overrunning on the questions. So sorry. Okay. So that brings to an end the questions. Item 9, receiving the minutes of the Cabinet Overview and Scrutiny Commission and committees. I call upon the leader, Councillor Peter Lamb, in the absence of the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Malik, to move the receipt of the reports of the meetings as set out in Agenda Item 9 on page 45 and in the associated supplementary agenda. Councillor Lamb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Unfortunately, the Deputy Mayor is unable to actually access this meeting. His technology is not allowing him to participate in this bit. He is in attendance, but he's unfortunately being forced to use the public link. So he's unable to participate due to being away from technology that would deliver this. But I just want to make sure members are aware he's not absent from the meeting. He is very much trying to participate.
I can confirm that. He's definitely watching the meeting, but he can't participate yet.
I move that the reports of the Planning, Licensing, Audit Committees, Overview and Scrutiny Commission and Cabinet be received. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
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 Yes.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Agreed. Agreed.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Agreed.
There's been no dissent, so that's good. So we'll consider that agreed. Reserved items, we have no items reserved, so it's on to the next item.
Which is what?
Okay, item 11, exempt information exclusion of the public. The full council is asked to consider passing the following resolution: that under section 100A in brackets 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following item of business on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act by virtue of the paragraphs specified against the item. Is that agreed?
Yes.
Agreed.
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 Thank you, everybody.
Agreed.
What this means in practice is that we are now going to exempt session for the last item on the agenda, brackets recommendation 2, leisure contract extension of variation, close brackets, and the live feed will end shortly. So thank you to all of the public and press for watching this meeting of the full council. Councillors, please use the other link that has been sent to you for this second meeting to access the exempt item, or if not, you will be dialed in by the officer and they will send you a link to accept.
Can we dial Councillor Malik in on this part of the meeting?
He should be able to, yes.
Okay.
I'm being told. With that being said, I declare the public segment of this meeting closed. Again, thank you everyone for attending, and we will restart the exempt session in a couple of minutes' time. Thank you.
When we finish, we've got to go to the exempt bit. No. Okay.